Are you lost driving online? Looking for a new destination for audible inspiration? Pull over here. This is Exit 18.
Hi everyone, Chris Short from the New Paltz Regional Chamber of Commerce, and we are on the Exit 18 podcast. Today's guest is a friend of mine, Jenn Denier from Sawyer Savings. She is the VP of Customer Experience there, and we met a few months ago. Jenn, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris.
Absolutely, this is great. One thing that I've noticed is that a lot of communities are pulling together right now, and I wanted to have you on the podcast today because there's some really cool things that you guys are doing over at Sawyer that really kind of resonates with the local community. I know you've been in business for 149 years, correct?
That's correct. Yep, we got our start in Saugerties in 1871, and we've been through many different business cycles, economic climates. So we've just been very committed to our communities since then.
That's great. And then I know that you have like a personal connection on how you kind of fell into banking years ago. And you have a really interesting story on how you started. And one of the things that I think we were talking about beforehand was, you're starting in the industry and then how it's kind of evolved into your current role. Can you share a little bit of like how you got started?
Sure. Well, I did. I fell into banking kind of accidentally. I was going to school for marketing and merchandising, and kind of had a dream of I wanted to decorate department stores and things like that for all the seasons. And I needed to come home because I had some personal stuff. My mom was sick, and I had to come home from college, and somebody said to me, well, why don't you get a job in a bank? I had a lot of retail store experience, and I kind of laughed at them because math was my least favorite subject in school. But I went and I interviewed at a couple banks, and I started right at the entry level of being a teller, and I got that foundation, and I moved really quickly over to the customer service side, and really fell in love with interacting with customers and listening to their stories, and hearing them. I started in banking right around the time, right before September 11th, and then the influx of customers that came to the Hudson Valley, to the bank I was working at, after that kind of really helped me, gain experience of talking to customers and hearing them. As bankers, we have so many products and offerings and all that stuff, but I really needed to hear and to listen, and that allowed me to, move through that. I then spent some time as a registered rep, selling investments and annuities through our investment program, and then I kind of shifted and made a pivot and went into the branch manager program, where I then managed my first branch, which I had, changed, and I worked at 3 different banks, very large banks, and had 7 different names. So by the time that had come through, I was really tired. I was tired of changing names and going through, and I felt that it was important to live our brand of whatever those organizations were. And I completely feel that there's a space for large banks, for very large corporations. But I always kind of wanted to work for a small bank. I wanted to be able to do the volunteer work that I was doing outside of my community, in my community. And I made some great connections through Leadership Ulster, which is a program sponsored by the Ulster County Chamber of Commerce. And I got a connection that somebody told me that Sawyer Savings was looking for a branch manager. And then I went there, and I spent 10 years as the branch manager in our Saugerties office before taking on this new position, which is a newly created role for us.
Well, it's awesome that, you kind of start with, something, I think all of us are in that position where you think you're going to go one way, and then, your gut, your talent, your expertise, and, that personal side of you says, I want to do something different. And I think when it comes to community, Sawyer being a bank around here in the community is really cool on how they're kind of like injected into all the small businesses around here. And, one thing we were talking about before was, the idea of right now we have the PPP program. And from what you shared with me, that you guys are processing a ton of applications. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Oh, yes. It's been really a great opportunity for us to really connect and solidify why we are a community bank. We believe in Main Street. We go to those restaurants, we shop in those stores. We know our customers, and at this point they need help. And that's why we felt so strongly that we needed to be able to do as many as we could. Round one kind of went really fast, but do a good job for our customers, because they're the heart and soul of our organization, including our team. It wasn't just the dollars of what we were processing, Chris, it was the jobs that we were saving. In round one, we saved 431 local jobs to our communities. Right now, we're a little ways into round two, and we're already at 276 jobs. Those are local people. Those are our friends. They're our neighbors. They're our customers. And, it just seemed like a good fit for the program. And our team worked tirelessly. They worked the weekends. We had individuals up till 1 a.m. processing those loans to get them through, because the system was bogging down and kicking everybody out. So our team's been committed to making sure we get as many processed as possible. And it's not just our lending team. We've had our CFO was working on them. Our president, Doug Sturgis, was working on them. I was working on them. It was kind of an all hands on deck and an assembly line of reviewing the files. We did all of our files. We did them by hand. So we got the documentation. They were reviewed. They were processed through the SBA site. I was then calling and notifying customers of their approval, and then the commercial team takes on, and so on and so forth. So we're really proud of the way we were able to come together as a organization to help our community.
That's great. One thing that I think is awesome about what you're doing, that really ties in that connection to Main Street, where a lot of people feel disassociated from, larger institutions and things like that. But you guys really kind of use that as a backbone of how you run your bank. Is that the idea is that Main Street is the most important piece. How does that play into your role, and what does that mean to you personally?
So for me personally, I mean, for this new role, it was kind of an idea that we had towards the end of last year. It's evolved even in the last few months that I've had it, and it's allowed me to connect to not just our Sorgerties customers, but to our Highland customers, to our Marlboro customers, to customers that we have. We have customers in Greene County, and it just has allowed me the flexibility and the opportunity to kind of get out of the office and be able to be available to them, to meet them, to hear what's working for them, what's not working for them. I want them to feel that by contacting me, they have a direct connection to our leadership team. If there's something that's not working, we want to know about it, because if we don't know about it, we can't fix it. And that's how you stay in business. As long as you have to, act, react, fix, and just continuously, respond to what the needs are in the community.
That's great. So with the title of Customer Experience VP, you've kind of become the storyteller of Sawyer. And I think one story that you shared with me that really resonates for me personally, just looking at the bigger picture of your history as an organization, is your very first deposit. Can you share that? I love that story. Could you share that?
Yep, our very first depositor was a female. So in February of 1871 is when the initial 12 citizens of Saugerties petitioned the state for the charter. And then the first official board meeting was, which is what we consider our bank anniversary, which is April 22nd. That's when they had their very first board meeting, and they elected John Kierstead, which, if anybody is familiar with the Saugerties area, through their historical society, John Kierstead is the Kierstead House. So, his ancestors were a very well-known family in Saugerties, and he was our first president. And then the bank took its first deposits in the month of May, and the first depositor was a female named Laverse Joy, and she was an employee of Peter Cantine. Again, if you know Saugerty's history, Cantine Memorial Complex, beautiful complex for baseball and softball, which hopefully we'll get back to one day. She made a $50 deposit through her employer, Peter Cantine, which back in 1871, $50 was a lot of money.
Definitely.
And it's just a great story that I think sometimes gets lost in the day-to-day operation of a financial institution, of all the things that we do on the day-to-day basis. But we've always been committed to families, community, students, and just some of the things, the causes that we support through our charitable giving. It's important to have those connections and to keep strong roots in those communities.
And that's awesome. What's great is I love the line that you guys use, experience worth banking on. I mean, obviously going back 149 years from that very first deposit to where you are now, things have changed. The landscape of finance has changed over that time. And I know, like right now, you have a lot of different programs that you're working with that a lot of people don't know about. What are some of the things that you guys are actually working on?
So we, I want to say about 8 years ago or so, we started an in-house first-time homebuyer program. That's one of our most popular programs that we have. It is a 100% financing program with no PMI, and it allows people to achieve the American dream, get into your first home comfortably. We want them to make happy memories there. We help students through a school savings program. And I have customers that now are well into their adult years say that they were banking in their elementary schools through Sawyer Savings Bank, 30, 40 years ago. So that's a program that we've been committed to for many years. We also sponsor at the high school level some financial education where they can more computer-based, for their age kind of base, where they have to save money, and then the computer software will give them expenses that they have to buy tires for their car, or they got laid off, or save money and pay for college tuition and things like that. So we understand that we have to start young and continue to grow that relationship through the years.
That's definitely, I think I remember being a little kid going to the bank and, putting those nickels and pennies into savings. That was something that my parents taught me over time. And what's really interesting about Sawyer is one of the things I think we spoke about before was being small is an advantage. Do you want to share your take on that?
Yes. Sometimes small is a disadvantage. I think that right now, being small in our size is at an advantage for us. We are a service-driven organization. Our customer service, we feel, is what sets us apart. Having that allows us to give one-on-one attention to our customers. For example, right now, our servicing department, we have put out there, if you have any questions about your account or your financial situation or your banking relationship with us, or anyone really, we're happy to answer questions for anyone, whether they're a customer or not, just to give advice. But we've worked through 200 deferments through our lending service department right now. So being able to, when you call us, you'll get a person. Somebody will call you back if you have to leave a message, and they're working through all of that right now because we know that this is unprecedented, and our customers, it's to no fault of their own that they're out of work and they need help right now. So I think that allows us, because we are a smaller institution, it allows us to really give that one-on-one service.
It definitely, I think that's a key point there where, not only in your role, but, right now people are gravitating towards, tighter communities, reaching out to people personally. How important to you is the personal connection for your job?
I think that, well, without personal connection, I probably wouldn't have this role. So it's so important, in all of business, people buy whatever you're selling, your services, your products. people want to buy from people. They want to buy from people they know, people they trust. I certainly do. That's why I gravitate towards smaller businesses. It's important to have those connections because, I have a boutique that I like in Saugerties that she knows what I like. So she'll call me when something comes in, or, I want our customers or people that maybe are thinking about switching banks that, if we make a connection, it's my job to kind of know you, get to know you, build a relationship, and to be able to look out for you. That's what having, I feel like we kind of got away from that. You used to have a banker. I remember my grandmother had a banker she went and saw, and that was her go-to, and she relied on them for experience and for advice. And I think that, it's hard to have that balance right now with the digital age, because we do have so many customers that take advantage of all the digital services, which are wonderful. They're certainly helping right now with the lobbies being closed. But to have a person to be able to pick up the phone and call, and maybe it's, I don't know how to get into the digital service, but it's a person. We've always prided ourselves, even though we have an auto attendant on our phones, if you hit 0, you will get a person. We have somebody always answering our phones.
That's awesome. Yeah, sometimes we get stuck in those loops on all that impersonal kind of,
Yeah.
press 1 for this, press 2 for that. So I think that's a big piece of where people kind of gravitate towards, that banker idea and somebody personal there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of uncertainty right now, right? So that's up in the air. There's a lot of questions and not many answers. So how do you personally kind of infuse confidence, in your membership? How do you tackle that? It's a tough thing right now.
It is tough. I think one thing that we have going for us is the fact that, this might be our first pandemic, but it's not Sawyer Savings Bank's first pandemic. Obviously we have different leadership and, different people throughout the years, but we've been through that. We've survived the Depression, we survived the Spanish flu, we've just, survived world wars. And I think that alone shows that we're a solid organization. We survived the economic crisis back in 08 and 09, and it's just important that we stay committed to our customers and to do the right thing, which allows us to stay in business.
I think that resilience is a word that everybody's using right now.
Yes.
Where, we got to push through this and kind of work as a team and the community and things like that. When it comes to resilience, it sounds like obviously Sawyer's been through, a lot over 150 years without, missing a beat. How does that play when you're talking to your colleagues and, the president and with a smaller organization? How does that resilience kind of come through? What are you seeing on the inside?
Well, our team has been, they've adapted so well. We're working in teams. Some people are home, and working from home, working in the branch. They switch off every week. And just that they know that they're providing this essential service to our customers and that we're making a difference. We're small, but we don't make headlines, but we do make an impact.
There's something that you shared with me earlier about, confidence and the idea of, how you've got to your position now in the past. And the idea, you mentioned that you listened to Rachel Hollis as somebody that's kind of moves you forward, and you shared some of that background. You want to touch on that a little bit? Because I thought that was a really good connection for people that are looking for a little bit of, a light to kind of follow or something like that. And she's one of the few authors that you kind of, mentioned earlier. How did you come across her, and what has that led you to now?
So I do a lot of personal development, reading. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm in the car a lot under normal life. My kids are very busy. They do a lot of sports, so I'm always in and out of the car. So I listen to a lot of audiobooks, or I listen to a lot of podcasts, and really started with Simon Sinek. I really liked his content, and I had gone away for a girls' weekend with some friends to a conference, which was for exercise and things like that, and network marketing. So I had a lot of friends in that space, and they really believed in a lot of personal development. So I kind of, got into it, and I actually had an opportunity to see Simon Sinek, and I didn't really know who he was, but I just remember sitting forward in my chair because whatever he was saying, I was just absorbing and taking it in. And that was about 5 years ago, and I've been committed to my own personal development. And I think that has helped me build more confidence. You know, having a high role in a bank, being a female, being a younger female, has certainly caused me, you know, to maybe not feel so confident sometimes. And by working on my own development has certainly helped me career-wise. And, you know, I certainly love the Rachel Hollis books. I love everything that she talks about for women empowerment. And I found a group about a year ago that was a blog of a female banker out in the Midwest. They're all community bankers. And I started reading her blog. I started following her on social media. And then I finally joined her online private group. And it's just such a great community of women. You know, we'll share ideas. You know, like right now we're all supporting each other. There's a lot of loan processors in there. So they're certainly feeling the PPP crunch. And I just think each person needs to build their brand, their own brand. Because if you don't do that and you don't feel confident in yourself, it's really hard to then put your best foot forward for your organization. And they are then having a community of people you can bounce ideas off of, you know, share trials and tribulations with. I think everyone needs to have that. And I think you have to get a great mentor, you know, and Rachel Hollis talks about mentors, that some people are her mentors that she's never even met. So yeah, for me, she's my mentor and I've never met her. And I just love the positivity she puts out, that it's okay to have a bad day. Doesn't mean everything's lost in that bad day.
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of, you know, we all go through ebbs and flows, and they're probably being heightened right now. I know,
Yes.
you know, one of the things that I follow is double down on your strengths and surround yourself with smart people to fill in those gaps. That's something that I live by. But when it comes to how you've evolved, something that Simon Sinek always talks about, I'm a fan as well, is he gets to the why. So I'm interested to kind of hear what's your why? What keeps you going?
I would say my family, you know, my kids, my husband. You know, my why is why I do what I do. You know, I don't believe in work-life balance, which I know some people might think is crazy. It's all life. And I learned that by finding out my why. It's all life, and you balance things accordingly depending on what's important at that moment. You know, I go to work every day and I do a good job, or I try to exceed my customers' expectations to do a good job for my employer, which then allows me to provide for my family. So it always comes back to my family. You know, I grew up in a very close family. You know, and I lost my parents a few years ago. So after that, going through that, you know, you realize what's really important. And, you know, my husband and my kids became, you know, the only other people I had. So, and that's about the time, you know, it was a few years after that that I found personal development, and I found Simon Sinek, and I kind of really leaned into finding out what your why was. So I think that, and I also too, it relates to family in your work family too. You know, you spend a lot of time with your work, with your colleagues. Sometimes you spend more time with those people than you do your real family during the week. So I just think it's very inclusive. So that's why I feel like it's all life, and you just balance it how you have to.
Kind of, yeah, you kind of take it as it comes.
Yep.
You mentioned mentorship. I'm a big fan of that. I've had some amazing mentors over the year, and to your point where, you know, you may or may not know them, you know, somebody that you look up for. How important has those conversations with other mentors or people that you look up to, how has that built your career over the last, say, 10, 15 years?
Oh, well, I mean, I have to start back to, you know, teachers that I had that kind of, you know, believed in me, you know, somebody that's believed in you probably a little, maybe sometimes before you believed in yourself. You know, that goes back to my family. My parents were obviously mentors for me, you know, and then when I started in banking, you know, I had a great branch manager, and he believed in me when this wasn't even going to be my career. So he kind of pushed me into realizing that this was something I could make a career and I could have a nice life with, and I was doing something good and I was making an impact on people, which really was the heart of what I wanted to do. It didn't matter what industry I was in, or what role I had, or what was the name of the company I worked for, I wanted to make an impact, and he helped me believe in that. And ironically, before I changed jobs, you know, through each career change I had, he was somebody that I looked up to, and I always kind of called him and said, what do you think? And, you know, bounced ideas off of them. I think it's so important to have mentors, as anyone, you know, even students growing up, everyone, coaches, they have to have mentor.
Yeah, having that ability to kind of bounce ideas around is huge. I've got a great network of, you know, close people that I work with on a daily basis. Then I have people I see on a weekly basis. And I even have one of my, I guess, say one of my favorite mentors. I touch base with him maybe every 6 months. And, you know, that's something that I'll seek out his advice, and vice versa. He'll call and, you know, kind of check up on me and say, hey, what's the latest in your world? How you doing? You know, is there anything I can help you with? And I think that's really important. So mentorship for me has definitely built my career over the last 15 years. I think that was a tipping point for me where, you know, I felt like I had to do it all on my own. And I think a lot of people kind of struggle with that idea, and I still do. That's something that, you know, that's a burden I put on myself, thinking, you know, I got to get everything done and I'm letting people down. And I think being vulnerable and saying, hey, I can't do it all and I need some help, you know, or at least some advice to make sure I'm not crazy. You know, is this an idea that I should pursue, or can you poke holes in this concept? You know, what am I missing? Because sometimes we get a little bit myopic and we're only looking at, you know, straight ahead, and sometimes we'll miss those side, you know, pieces or opportunities that may be, you know, presenting themselves. You, in your position, do you mentor others in your role? And, you know, how do you approach mentorship when you're working with somebody? Because I think a lot of people don't realize that even though they may not have somebody formally that they're mentoring, there's people looking up to you. So do you approach that in your role? Do you do it inside work, outside of work? Because I've got different people that, you know, will call up and say, hey, I need some advice. How do you handle that? Do you mentor others, and what is your approach?
Absolutely. I think everyone mentors others, whether they realize they're doing it or not. Parents mentor their kids, you know, lead by example. You're teaching your kids, you know, whether you're coaching, you're showing, you know, young individuals or individuals, you know, the way you would do things, and hopefully they're going to follow suit. You know, obviously I was a branch manager for 16 years, so it was always my job to coach and mentor my team on that work that I worked with. But as I've kind of evolved into this role, I am still mentoring, and you know, I'm still reaching people, whether it's through my work or through community work that I'm doing, just to kind of show what I'm doing, or, you know, for young women especially, that you can have a career, you can have a family, you can do all of those things that you want to do. And through banking, I didn't realize in the beginning, I've always said that a leader isn't always the person in charge. So whether you have the top role or the top title or the top position, you still can be a mentor, and you still can act as a role model for others just by having a high level of integrity and acting a certain way and being there for people. You know, I always felt as a department head, you know, I worked for them. You know, my day revolved around, did they need something, and coaching them and mentoring them. And now I'm able to do it on a higher level. And I'm also able to kind of coach and mentor customers, you know, where they may have questions regarding their banking or their finances, you know, and that's one of the things I'm really excited about this role, that allows me the opportunity to, you know, kind of outreach more, where, you know, when you're managing a branch, you kind of are right there because you have to run the day to day. So this allows me the opportunity to get out there and to meet people and to network, and to really just hear what the community needs. You know, I am the customer experience officer, but it's really I'm the community experience officer, because if there's something happening that we should know about, or there's a cause that we should get behind, it's really my job to hear about it in the community, to make a connection, and then to bring it back to our team so we can get behind something.
That's awesome. You know, being that storyteller, you see it both ways, which is, you know, how to tell the story of Sawyer, but then how to tell the story of community. That's awesome. I think a lot of people miss that, you know, it goes both ways. You know, especially with us being on social, we forget to be social in person. And it looks like you really kind of, you know, sunk your teeth into this position and really play that role to, you know, a high level. And I think what I'd be interested to see if you had advice for other, women in a leadership role like yourself, what would be a piece of advice that you would want to share with everybody?
Be yourself and try to have confidence in yourself, because it's easy for, you said yourself, it's easy to think you're not doing a good enough job or you have to get everything done. Be yourself, be confident in yourself, and come from a place of help and service, and the rest kind of falls into place. Be true to who you are, what your why is, and allow that to kind of guide you and to do the right thing.
I think that's some really good advice, especially right now when everything is very uncertain. Being true to yourself, having confidence, and kind of moving forward. That's a perfect way to kind of tie it all together. Jenn, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. This was great talking to you, and I'm really inspired by the way you've taken this role and kind of injected yourself into the local community. It really shows how much that community piece is a big part of Sawyer and how they do business. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris. It was a pleasure.
This is awesome. So everybody stay tuned. We've got a lot more great conversations like this on the Exit 18 podcast, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Thanks a lot, Jenn. Appreciate it.